The first time I was arrested, I was 32 years old, which was 5 years ago, and it was due to me driving with a suspended license. And before that day, I had never gotten into any kind of trouble with the law. And let me tell you that it was not a pleasant experience. And this is why I chose to speak to you guys about alternatives to imprisonment. The alternatives to imprisonment are types of punishment or treatment other than time in prison that can be given to a person who is convicted of committing a crime. Some of these are also known as alternative sanctions. Alternatives can take form of fines, restorative justice, transformative justice, or no punishment at all, which it's what I received. Since I had never been in trouble, I went through processing, which took about 8 to 12 hours. It was 12 hours, it wasn't 8. And they let me go on my own will. I didn't need to post bond, nobody needed to come sign for me, pick me up, none of that. So, there is alternatives as long as you're not constantly getting into trouble. Capital punishment or corporal punishment and electronic monitoring are also alternatives to imprisonment, but are not promoted by modern prison reform movements for decarceration due to them being carceral in nature. Capital discipline, physical punishment, and electronic monitoring are all alternatives to incarceration, but because they are carceral in character, they are not supported by current prison reform groups for decarceration. I personally believe in alternatives to imprisonment. That being said, I don't think that sexual assault and homicides are crimes that, people can just flip a switch and say, hey, I won't do that anymore. So, to me, it doesn't apply to this. This doesn't apply to this or apply to them. And, how do you feel about it? In general, reformers want to reduce jail population and promote the use of alternatives with focus on rehabilitation. The major justifications for these are that these sanctions lessen the likelihood of reoffending and lower the state cost and reduce jail congestion. Academic research is divided on whether high incarceration rates lower crime rates more than low incarceration rates. While prisons do remove offenders from the society, there is little evidence that they help rehabilitate or discourage crime. Some convicts are at risk of being lured back into the criminal underworld. So they may form friendships with other offenders, have their medical or mental health needs ignored, or face more violence from other inmates, which I was scared of, and even health needs or from inmates, and even employees. If the prisoner is a parent, the family will suffer as a result of his or her absence. Released inmates frequently struggle to find jobs and make lawful living. As a result, most countries have high rates of recidivism. In the U.S., 67.8% of free convicts are in prison again within 3 years, and 76.6% are in prison again within 5 years. Prison reformers advocate for lowering prison populations, primarily through lowering the number of people in prison for minor offenses. One of the most important goals is to improve conditions by minimizing congestion. Alternative approaches, according to prison reformers, are typically superior at rehabilitating criminals and reducing crime in the long run. One of these alternatives is periodic detention, which I believe that it could work. Maybe, I believe it will work. For me, thinking about how I got arrested for not driving with a license, I could see crimes like that. Maybe this whole alternative periodic detention might work for that. But, maybe not for everybody. Periodic detention is a form of custodial term in which the offender is detained in a jail on a regular basis, such as on Friday through Sunday evenings each week, but it is free at other times. Periodic detention was promoted by prison reformers as an alternative to incarceration, since it allowed prisoners to continue working, which makes sense, and they preserved family ties and avoiding mingling with more dangerous criminals in regular institutions. It was also far less expensive to administer. Another alternative would be family involvement. Since 1989, family group conferences have been utilized in New Zealand to address child and adolescent offending, as well as child abuse, as part of both the juvenile justice and the care and protection process for children. Understanding how alternatives to imprisonment or detention for children are created and implemented is critical. According to research, imprisonment and education are inextricably linked. Restorative justice in the form of boot camps and military programs is being examined for inclusion in public schooling choices. A number of programs for anger management, self-esteem, and other issues have been established, and those who deal with academics are being asked to create such alternatives. It has been demonstrated that individuals in society are ready to pay for juvenile offender rehabilitation other than alternative types of punishment. For instance, in Kentucky, has enacted legislation that favors community-based therapy over incarceration for minors. Some of the solutions implemented an early intervention procedure, evidence-based methods for screening and assessing juveniles, or impose duration limitations on out-of-home placements. Prisons do not disappear social problems, they disappear human beings. Homelessness, unemployment, drug addiction, mental illness, and illiteracy are only a few of the problems that disappear from public view when the human beings contending with them are relegated to cages. And that was a quote by Angela Davis. Thank you for your time, and have a good night.